Before Prince Harry could even imagine walking through another palace door, everything reportedly changed behind the scenes. Not because of another explosive interview, not because of another family argument, but because King Charles allegedly made one unexpected move that nobody saw coming. The whispers racing through royal circles claim the king has quietly shifted from hoping for a reconciliation to protecting the future of the monarchy itself. And if those whispers are even remotely true, Harry's royal future isn't just uncertain anymore, it's hanging by a thread.
I think you can summarize it in 2 words: desperation and failure. And Meghan is someone who is desperate for fame. She's desperate for recognition. She's desperate for money, of course, and status.
People think she's being so clever. However, royal sources now revealing that they are so terrified about a potential stunt involving her meeting with King Charles that there are suggestions they may even ask her to hand over her devices.
Everything's just fake, isn't it, you know? And that's part of the problem of why the brand is not working. Sorry about this noise, yeah, it'll stop. But this is really why the brand is not working, because clearly people are just seeing right through this and thinking, this is rubbish. Of course, given the fact that if she was so desperate to want to make amends inside the British monarchy.
And of course, then there's Thomas Markle, who, I mean, it's just cruel at this point. Meghan is, the longer this goes on, is just cruel.
And Prince William's own position, which I think is absolutely steadfast on this, will say you can come, but you won't be seen with us, and you won't be seen in any royal context, and you better behave on these terms. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
The moment those reports surfaced, people stopped asking whether father and son would finally reunite. Instead, a far darker question took over. Why would palace insiders supposedly treat a private family meeting like a security operation? Why would phones reportedly need to stay outside? Why would every conversation suddenly become something that needed protecting? Those aren't the precautions people take when trust still exists. Those are the precautions people take after years of believing every private conversation could eventually become tomorrow's headline. And suddenly, it felt as though Charles had reached a painful conclusion. Family could wait, the crown could not. Every decision inside the palace now seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Every delay looked intentional. Every silence sounded louder than any public statement. While the world continued talking about forgiveness, another story was quietly unfolding behind those palace walls. Some believed the king's advisors had finally convinced him that every emotional decision now carried constitutional consequences. The monarchy was no longer reacting to Harry's moves. According to growing speculation, it was preparing for a future that might not include him at all.
But I think that Charles wants to have some sort of reconciliation because he is weak and he's ill, and he somehow rightly feels that Harry is somewhat feeling sad for himself and somehow wants to make amends. But I don't believe that they're going to give them what Meghan really wants.
But that is not how the people watching this most closely are reading it. The phrase being used over and over isn't reunion. It's crawling back on bended knees. According to commentators tracking every move, they've hit a wall.
So I think we're seeing them effectively crawl on bended knees back to Britain, and they are to some extent going to be pathetically great.
That polished story about healing suddenly began to crack. The picture everyone wanted to believe a son returning to support his father was being challenged by a completely different narrative. Palace watchers started noticing that nothing official was actually happening. No confirmed invitations, no confirmed meetings, no confirmed plans. Instead, there was silence. And in royal history, silence often speaks louder than announcements. Then came another twist that only fueled more speculation. People began connecting the timing with Harry and Meghan's reported financial pressures. Streaming contracts no longer dominated headlines. Massive projects appeared to slow. Public excitement wasn't what it once had been. Whether connected or not, many commentators started asking the same uncomfortable question: why now?
Say Harry and Meghan are pumping this stuff out at the rate of knots, you know, threatening to bring the children. And again, that ridiculous post the other day of them both turning inwards, it just becomes tedious, doesn't it? The fakery with the smudging and the Photoshop. stop. You think, oh, just grow up. Everything now looks mad.
Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about reconciliation anymore. It became a debate about leverage. Some insisted Harry was searching for peace. Others believed the palace saw something completely different. They believed Charles wasn't simply evaluating his son. He was evaluating risk. Every decision now reportedly carried enormous consequences for William, Catherine, the future king, and eventually the next generation.
Are now so desperate in terms of the finances that everything these two chances, that these two grifters have said before, have been chucked out the window. But what's interesting is the Express is also reporting that Harry and Meghan have had to take on a new crisis management team, given they know how Brits really feel about this visit. With the headline here, Meghan Markle's bombshell make or break plan to win the UK back over, Markle hiring a team of PRs in order to do so. Let me just tell you right now, it doesn't matter what you're paid, these PRs should turn down the job because some missions are just impossible.
Then another piece supposedly slid into place.
It has about technically 2 more years before you can fail in a business. Your business can lose money for 5 years and you get massive write-offs. At the end of the 5 years, it's done. She's got about 2 more years.
If opportunities outside the royal spotlight were becoming harder to secure, proximity to the monarchy suddenly became more valuable than ever. That theory spread rapidly among commentators who argued that royal association remained the couple's strongest currency. Whether fair or unfair, the speculation refused to disappear. Then came the moment that completely changed how people interpreted everything.
And I think this whole thing has just been a last-minute desperate attempt, like throw everything that they've got. They know they're pretty much doing their swan song, in my opinion. Everything has just turned to absolute ash, and this is the last thing they've got, and they've just thrown it all in a big ball. They've given pretty much, 3 weeks notice?
That was when rumors exploded that Charles had quietly authorized an entirely different strategy. Instead of rushing toward another emotional reunion, he was allegedly putting every future interaction through one single filter. Would this strengthen the monarchy or weaken it? If the answer wasn't crystal clear, the meeting reportedly wouldn't happen. It wasn't being described as revenge. It was being framed as survival. And if that unexpected move was real, it changed everything. Because Harry was no longer waiting for a father's forgiveness. He was waiting for a king's decision. And inside palace walls, those are two very different things. The deeper people looked into the situation, the stranger everything supposedly became.
She never listens to anybody. She didn't want to listen to people when she was behind the palace walls. You know, she just careers on ahead and she chooses the path that she wants to take and then blames everybody when it doesn't go the way that she wants it. I mean, we heard when she was going to Australia, she was going to I don't know if this was actually truthful or whether this was made up, but she apparently had humility training to help her come across as more compassionate to people.
It wasn't only about whether Harry would be welcomed back into the palace anymore. It was about what kind of return would even be possible. Rumors started flying that every request, every appearance, every photograph, and every private conversation was now being measured against one invisible question. Who benefits most from this moment? That alone changed the entire atmosphere. Instead of a family preparing for an emotional reunion, it felt as though two completely different futures were quietly colliding behind closed doors. One future protected tradition at all costs. The other desperately needed one more royal connection to keep the story alive. Whether those rumors were fair or wildly exaggerated hardly mattered anymore because perception had already taken over. The palace's silence only poured fuel onto the fire. No dramatic denials, no emotional statements, just carefully measured distance. And the longer that silence lasted, the louder the speculation became. People began wondering whether Charles had quietly realized that every compromise made today might become tomorrow's regret. Once trust disappears inside a family that also happens to be one of the world's oldest institutions, every handshake suddenly feels like a gamble. Every smile carries risk. Every photograph becomes potential history. That was why so many royal watchers started insisting the king's unexpected move wasn't about punishing Harry at all. It was supposedly about drawing a line that could never again be erased. Then attention shifted toward William, and suddenly another layer of the mystery appeared. According to the growing palace whispers, the Prince of Wales wasn't interested in dramatic confrontations or emotional speeches. His greatest weapon was simply distance. While everyone else debated reconciliation, William reportedly focused only on stability. Those closest to the future king were said to believe that rebuilding public confidence mattered more than rebuilding private relationships. That idea completely changed how people interpreted Charles's alleged decision. Perhaps this wasn't simply one father's heartbreaking choice. Perhaps it was the beginning of a carefully planned transition that placed the future of the crown above every personal emotion. Meanwhile, Harry's position looked increasingly fragile inside the rumor mill. Every attempt to reconnect was interpreted through suspicion. Every public appearance generated another wave of questions. Was it genuine? Was it strategic? Was it necessary? The speculation became endless. The cruel reality was that once doubt enters the conversation, every action starts looking like evidence for somebody's theory. That was exactly the trap many believed Harry had fallen into. Even sincere gestures were now being viewed through years of accumulated controversy, interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and public accusations. Fair or unfair, the narrative had become almost impossible to control. Then came the biggest twist of all. Palace insiders supposedly started whispering that Charles had quietly accepted something he had resisted for years. Not every broken relationship can be repaired simply because people share the same blood. Sometimes responsibility to history outweighs responsibility to family. If those whispers were true, then the king's unexpected move wasn't delaying Harry's future. It was redefining it completely. Harry might always remain Charles's son, but whether he could ever again play a meaningful role inside the royal institution had suddenly become an entirely different question. And that realization sent shockwaves through royal watchers. For years, the story had been about whether Harry would return. Now, the story had become whether there would even be a place left for him if he did. The palace had changed. The public had changed. William's responsibilities had grown. Catherine's role had become even more central. A younger generation stood much closer to the heart of the monarchy than ever before. Time itself appeared to be quietly closing doors that once seemed impossible to shut. Perhaps that's why Charles' unexpected move felt so devastating to those still hoping for a dramatic reconciliation. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. There were no cameras, no emotional speeches, no official declarations. Just one quiet decision that, according to endless speculation, altered the balance of the entire royal family. And if that balance has truly shifted beyond repair, then Harry's greatest battle may no longer be winning back his father's trust. It may be proving that his royal future still exists at all. Until the palace finally breaks its silence, every unanswered question will continue feeding the biggest mystery of them all. Has the final chapter of Harry's royal story already been written without him knowing it?